And Shell, you have an amazing story of going through storms and of seeing God at work and how he brought you through those storms. So why don't you tell us your story?
First, I find it humorous that the topic is fear, and then he's like, get up on the stage and talk. So very real today. But for me, growing up was pretty comfortable when I was young. We lived in Greensburg and close to family and close to friends. And very abruptly, when I was 9, my dad took a job change that quickly moved us to Houston, Texas. And it was away from everybody we knew and all that we, had known to be comfortable with. And so depression is something that has a lineage in my family. And so when it's the right mix of things that don't go as planned and then how you react to them, it could rear its ugly head. So when I was 12, I was diagnosed with stomach ulcers and a couple other medical issues that had come from dealing with depression and anxiety. And so we had a distant faith growing up. I believed in God sometimes, and I knew that he was probably out there somewhere, but it definitely wasn't something that was personal to me. And I had this belief in my head that I was an accident and that I had no real gifts or talents, and why was I even here? Like, why was I put on this planet? And so when that is like a constant thing playing in a tape in your head, it starts to affect how you live and how you think and how you react to things. And I questioned a lot as a teenager and a young person, as so many of us do. And I also knew that I knew what was best for me, I thought, and it was to take matters into my own hands. But what that brought was a very cold heart and someone that was very distant, and I just didn't have much hope, and I wasn't connected to anybody or anything. And but it was my attempt to build up my walls and to keep other people from hurting me. If I didn't let them in, then there was nothing they could do that could hurt me. And there was a fear of failure, a fear of loneliness, a fear of not being able to take care of myself. And it kind of led me to look for my worth in the wrong things and with the wrong people. So fast forward to the age of 20, when I was searching for something greater, my search for significance. And I had become so disappointed in myself and the life that I was leading that I made some big decisions that were not very wise, but by God's grace, it led me to a pastor in Philadelphia, and he and his wife invested time in me, and they saw me for what Jesus could do in me instead of what I did to myself. And anywho, they invested in me, and they let me do life with them. They brought me silly things to restaurants with them and family trips and camping and things. But it really allowed me to see how Christian marriages and families work and how people treat each other. And it was a huge eye-opening thing. Then that pastor was deaning a week of camp down in Maryland, and he asked if I wanted to be a counselor down there. And I'd never been to camp before. I didn't really understand what that stuff was. And I was like, well, you can't tell a pastor no. So okay. And so I went, and in his wisdom, he knew I just needed to get away from what I had done to myself and really just focus on my relationship with God and learn more about that. And so that week at camp, it was with 5th and 6th graders, and they were learning scripture memory verses, and then they had to come to their counselors for their points for their team. And so these 5th graders and 6th graders were sharing with me scriptures that I had never heard before, and I had to look them up to make sure that what the kids were saying was true, but they were teaching me about who Jesus was. And so then later on that week, I was reading in the book of Acts and about how people who were coming to faith, were getting baptized, and I approached my pastor, and I'm like, is that something, like, do you guys do that? Because I want to do that. And he was like, there's a swimming pool, like, let's make this happen. And so then a lot of the other counselors that were there that week, they went to Cincinnati Bible College, and they were like, oh, you should come. And I'm like, you can go to a college and learn about the Bible? And they're like, yes. And I was like, oh, like, sign me up, because I just, like, I couldn't get enough. And so I called the school from the camp, and then by the time I got home, the information was there, and so I filled it out, and I left for school a couple weeks later, 12-hour drive from home. So I was like, bye. And then when I went out there, it was like me and Jesus, and like just such a good time to learn his truth, and just to just see how he works in other people's lives and what his plans for me could possibly be. But I will not say that everything was easy, and it really opened up a time for me and Jesus to work through, like, me. Like, why did I do the things that I did, and why did I react, and why did I think the way I did? And so while I would say that it was a wonderful time of learning who Jesus was, it was also a very difficult time because I really needed to work through my stuff. And the school offered a master's in counseling, Christian counseling program. And so then for the students, they would offer free counseling so that the master's degree students could get their experience. So I signed up for that, and I thought, like, you know, what's the worst that can happen? Like, the worst is it wouldn't work, and I would deal with this longer, and you know, just keep being me. But the best that could happen would be that there would be freedom, and so it was worth a chance. And so then, as I worked through that stuff, it was so great to find that freedom and to know my triggers and to be able to have wisdom and scripture memorized to put with those things when I was starting to feel, badly about myself or about things that were going on. And it really just gave me the tools that I needed to be better. And so then, as I was nearing the end and I had a couple more counseling sessions left, I met this boy, and he had this Pittsburgh accent, and he wore his heart on his sleeve, and he had twinkly eyes, and he wanted to love and serve Jesus all the days of his life. And I was like, that's interesting, because, like, I have Pittsburgh roots, and I want to love and serve Jesus all the days of my life, and I like twinkly eyes, and I'm okay with someone who wears their heart on their sleeve. That's not a bad thing. And so it was Bill, in case you're wondering. And so as I was talking with my new friend Bill, I kind of liked him a little. And then I was like, oh, crud. Like, he's going to be this pastor, and then, like, he's not going to want any part of me because I have this, like, junk in my past and whatever. And I'm, like, this damaged person, and I'm a little bit weird. And so I thought, well, I just need to be honest with him, because if there's a chance that this might work, then there needs to be, like, an honest foundation. And so the one day I was like, I need to talk to you. And so then I just like gave it all out. And I'm like, and I'm in counseling. And do you know what that boy said? He said, good for you for getting the help that you need. And I was like, what? Like, who says that? Anyway, and so that was just really cool. He's cool. Anywho, but all that to say, like, going through the process was not easy, but I feel like we all have our junk that we need to deal with. And you can't always see people's junk when you're looking at them or when you're just talking, nonchalantly with them. But we all have it, and we can be so much healthier if we identify it and work through it together. Like, think of all the things that we could accomplish. And I really want to create, like, a new lineage in my family. And I want our kids to grow up seeing, like, this is how you do life. Like, things don't always go right, but Jesus is always with you, and you don't have to be afraid. Like, he will always be with you, and he'll give you what you need, and he'll give you who you need. And anyway, I think I hope that you could take encouragement from the fact that, like, you have lived through 100% of your worst days. Like, you did. And so, never did he leave you, and never did he forsake you. And plus, we're all here doing this together, and I think that's pretty great too. So, anywho, that's all.
Hey.
Thanks. Thanks.